Okay, let's go ahead and look at number 14 here. We are given that triangle CAT is congruent to triangle PAW. So we can go ahead and mark something here. We know that angle C is going to be congruent to angle P because it's in the same corresponding position. We know that angle A is going to be congruent to angle A, or specifically, angle CAT is congruent to angle PAW. We can't just say angle A because there are actually 4 angles that relate with angle A. So angle CAT is congruent to angle PAW. And then lastly, we know that angle T is congruent to angle W. And we can say that because there's only one angle attached to those. Now we need to go ahead and label the congruent side lengths. So I'm going to go ahead and say that we have CT is congruent to PW. It's important to note here that you have to have the line segments on top. Next one, we can go ahead and say that CA is congruent to PA. The order does matter. CA congruent to PA. And lastly, we can say that TA is congruent to WA. Okay, moving on to number 15. It says, give the 2 ways to write proportions using lengths in right triangles in reference to geometric mean. So let's start with the altitude one. If I look at my altitude here, my altitude has a relationship with the 2 segments of my hypotenuse. So I'm going to show my altitude twice. And then I'm going to write the 2 segments of my hypotenuse in the other positions. Now, technically, if you had this entire fraction flipped and this entire fraction flipped, that would be fine. I just like to put my geometric mean term, that A value, that shows up twice on the top left. Okay, now let's go ahead and look at one of my legs. If I look at leg 2, that's the one that's going to show up twice. And with the legs, the other 2 numbers we're looking for is the hypotenuse, so the entire length here, and the segment closest to the hypotenuse. So for this one, it would be S2. So I'm going to have H and S2 as my other 2 numbers. It doesn't matter necessarily which order they are in. You could flip-flop it because when you multiply, they're going to end up being multiplied together anyways. And my last one here, if I take my leg 1 is what shows up twice. And then I'm again using my hypotenuse, but then the segment closest to my my leg this time is segment 1. So I've got the hypotenuse and segment 1 that shows up. Number 16, find the value of x for each problem. If I know that these 2 angles down here are congruent, I know that this is an isosceles triangle. That's what these little tick marks here mean as well. So I can go ahead and set these equal to each other. 3x minus 6 equals 24. You can go ahead, pause this, finish solving it, unpause it to see my work. And we should have gotten that x equals 10. Moving on, number 17. 17, I've got these 2 legs that are congruent, so I know that these 2 angles are going to be congruent, so we can go ahead and set these equal to each other. So I've got 4x minus 20 equals 3x. Now this is just an algebra problem. Go ahead and pause this video, solve it, unpause it to see my answer and my solution. You should have gotten x equal to 20. Number 18 here, we know that this is an isosceles triangle because we have 2 side lengths that are congruent here. However, this time we're not going to set 55 and x equal to each other because they are not the base angles. 55 is a base angle with this angle over here, so I can go ahead and say that this angle is 55 degrees. And then we need to know how many degrees are in a triangle. Well, 180, so we can go ahead and say that 55 plus x equals 180. Quick little math there, solve that and get x to equal 70. Moving on to number 19. 19 is going to use that side splitter theorem because we have 2 pairs of parallel lines, or really 1 pair of parallel lines. But it doesn't really matter where you start. I'm just going to choose to start with this x here. If I start with x, the side that it's being split with is this position of 2. So we're going to have x divided by 2 is going to be equal to And then on the other side, I have to start in the same position. If I start with this x up here, I have to start with this 5 on top. And then I go over to that 3 on the bottom because that's what's being split. Now it's just a quick cross multiply. So 3x equals 10. Divide by 3, we get x to equal 3.3 repeating.